My fiancé slept with my father while I was building our future, so I kicked them out and took back everything I had. I'm 32 years old, male, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I worked hard in construction for years and eventually started my own contracting business that was finally making good money. I'm not one to brag, but I'm sick too. Hit the gym 5 days a week and drive a Ford F-150 that I paid off early. I've worked for everything I have. Nobody ever handed me anything. Back in high school, I was the kid who couldn't figure out what he wanted. My grades were decent, but college didn't seem like my thing. My dad, Robert, 56 years old, was constantly on my case about it. You need a degree to be somebody in this world, he'd say, even though he never went to college himself. He joined the military right out of high school, did his 20 years, and then landed a cushy vice president job at an insurance firm through his military connections. A classic do si note si do type. When I chose trade school instead of a 4-year degree, you'd think I told him I was becoming a professional clown. Manual labor is for people who can't use their brains. He'd say at family dinners, like I wasn't even there. Meanwhile, I was learning actual skills while his office buddies paid contractors like me thousands to fix their fancy houses. My mom, Sarah, 53 years old, was always the peacemaker. She's worked as a nurse for 25 years, pulling night shifts and dealing with ungrateful patients while somehow still having the energy to smooth things over when Dad and I got into it. She's the real MVP, always telling me, "Your father just wants what's best for you." Even when he was being a complete jerk, a classic enabler, I guess, but she meant well by 28. I had my own crew and was making more than most of my friends with their college degrees and student loans. That's when I met Amber at my buddy Mark's barbecue. Let me tell you about Amber. She's 28 years old and is the kind of girl all the guys want to talk to the moment she walks in. With long blonde hair, an athletic build from all those boutique fitness classes she took, and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. She was captivating. She worked as a marketing manager for a tech startup and always dropped phrases like smashing the patriarchy and breaking glass ceilings in conversation. At first, I thought it was cool how passionate she was about women's rights. We hit it off right away, even though we were complete opposites on paper. She had a master's degree in communications and came from an upper-middle-class family where everyone was a professional something or other. I kept waiting for her to realize I wasn't in her league, but she seemed genuinely into me. "I love how you work with your hands," she'd say. "All the guys I meet are these soft tech brothers who couldn't change a tire if their life depended on it." It stroked my ego, I won't lie. We moved in together after 8 months, and I proposed on our 2-year anniversary. Nothing fancy, just took her hiking to this overlook I knew and got down on one knee at sunset. The ring was my grandmother's, a vintage Art Deco piece that my mom had been saving for when I found the right girl. Amber cried and said it was perfect. When I told my parents we were engaged, my mom was thrilled. Surprisingly, my dad seemed impressed. "She's going places," he told me privately. "Smart move, son." It was maybe the first genuine compliment he'd given me in years. I should have known something was off right then. We spent the next year planning the wedding. Amber went all in on the details: rustic barn venue, custom invitations, farm-to-table, catering, the works. Every time I saw the budget creeping up, she'd say, "This is our special day, Jake. Don't you want it to be perfect?" And like an idiot, I'd agree. Meanwhile, I was thinking long-term. I wanted to put a down payment on a house in a good school district, started a separate savings account for future kid expenses, and began researching how to expand my business to include more commercial contracts for stability. I wanted to build something solid for us. Amber was saying all the right things too. She'd talk about future kids, what we'd name them, and how we'd raise them to be strong, independent thinkers. Sometimes she'd go off on tangents about gender-neutral parenting, or how she'd never let a daughter of hers play with Barbies. But I figured that was just her being progressive. Life was good. Business was booming. I had more work than I could manage, juggling deadlines and preparations. Our house was nearly ready to move into, right after the wedding, the big day I'd been counting down to. The meeting was scheduled for July 15th, just 6 weeks away. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Then came that Tuesday in June that shattered my entire world. I was at a job site, a high-end bathroom remodel in the fancy part of town, the kind of project where the client wants to see the boss regularly. I was stopping by to check on progress and smooth over some concerns about the imported tile we were installing. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket, but I was in professional mode. Mrs. Peterson was already annoyed about a delivery delay, so the last thing I needed was to be checking messages while she was showing me exactly how she wanted the shower niche positioned. Client relationships are everything in my business. When I finally stepped outside to take a call, I saw 6 missed calls from Mom. Not texts, calls. Mom never calls during the day, lest something is seriously wrong. She knows I'm working. I immediately called back, my heart already racing. She answered on the first ring, and Jake. Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying for hours. "You need to come home right now. It's about your father and Amber." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "Mom, what's going on? Is everyone okay? Was there an accident?" I was already walking to my truck, signaling to my foreman, Miguel, to take over. "No, nothing's okay." She struggled to get words out between sobs. "Please, just come to the house." She hung up. The drive to my parents' place normally takes about 25 minutes. I made it in 15, running yellow lights and probably breaking every speed limit. My mind was racing through worst-case scenarios. Had Dad and Amber gotten into some kind of argument? Was someone hurt? Why would they even be together in the first place? Amber was supposed to be at a wedding planning retreat with her bridesmaids. This week, some spa thing 2 hours upstate, where they'd finalize all the details while getting massages and doing yoga. She'd been planning it for months, saying it was a modern alternative to a traditional bachelorette party. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I saw Amber's white Prius parked behind my dad's Silverado. My confusion deepened. Had she come back early? Why would she be at my parents' house instead of our apartment? The front door was unlocked. I walked in to find Mom sitting at the kitchen table, still in her scrubs from work. Her eyes were red and swollen, makeup streaked down her face. When she saw me, she broke down again, covering her face with her hands. I rushed to her side, kneeling next to her chair. "Mom, please. You're scaring me. It's what happened?" She took a shuddering breath. "I came home early from my shift. Migraine. I was going to lie down for a bit before my evening shift." She paused, her hands trembling as she reached for a tissue, and I heard noises from upstairs. My mouth went dry. "What are you saying, Mom? I thought your father was watching something inappropriate or ridiculous like that." But when I went upstairs, she couldn't finish the sentence. Fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. A roaring started in my ears, like standing too close to a jackhammer. "Where are they now?" My voice sounded strange, detached, like it belonged to someone else. "Still upstairs? They don't know I called you." She reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't just pretend I didn't see. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, all the air leaving my lungs." But underneath the shock, a burning rage was building. "How long has this been going on?" I managed to ask. Mom shook her head. "I don't know for certain, but there were texts on your father's phone. I checked while he was in the shower, trying to understand. They go back months, Jake. They've been meeting here while I'm at work and you're at your job sites." Each word felt like another knife twisting in my chest. All those late nights Amber claimed to be working on a big marketing campaign. All those girls' nights that ran suspiciously long. All those times Dad canceled our fishing trips because of sudden back pain or meetings with old army buddies. I stood slowly, my fists clenching and unclenching at my sides. "Stay here," I told Mom, my voice deadly calm. She grabbed my arm, eyes wide with panic. "Jake, please don't do anything stupid. I can't handle any more right now. I gently removed her hand. I just want to see it with my own eyes. I need to know it's real. The truth was, part of me was still hoping for some insane misunderstanding. Maybe Mom had seen something innocent and jumped to conclusions. Maybe there was some explanation that wouldn't destroy the entire foundation of my life. But deep down, I already knew. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Without hesitation, I didn't knock or call out, just pushed open the door to my parents' bedroom and stood frozen in the doorway, absorbing the scene before. They were thankfully dressed, but it was clear what had been happening. The sheets were tangled, and clothes were scattered on the floor. Amber was sitting on the edge of the bed, combing her fingers through her messy hair. Dad was buttoning his shirt with shaking hands, his back to the door. When they realized someone had entered, they both whipped around. Amber's face shifted from annoyed to horrified in an instant. Dad froze, one hand still on his shirt buttons. For a brief moment, nobody moved. It felt like time had frozen. Perfect moment of clarity where I saw exactly who these people were. Then something strange happened. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was more like the noise you'd make if someone punched you in the stomach. "Don't stop on my account," I said, my voice unnervingly steady. "Seems like you two have a good thing going. Son, I can explain." Dad finally found his voice. "Don't call me that." I cut him off sharply. "You don't get to call me that anymore." Amber had shifted into damage control mode, tears already streaming down her face. She took a step toward me, hands outstretched. "Jake, baby, this isn't what it looks like. I swear to you, really?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe because it looked exactly like my fiancée was screwing my father in my parents' bed. I nodded toward her ears, where she was wearing the diamond earrings I bought her for Christmas. Her hand flew to her ear reflexively, and her expression shifted from fake contrition to pure panic. "How long has this been going on?" I demanded. They exchanged a quick glance, which only fueled my rage. "How long?" I slammed my fist against the doorframe hard enough that a framed photo fell off the wall and shattered. Amber flinched. 3 months, she whispered. "But Jake, it didn't mean anything. It was just physical. I've been so stressed about the wedding spare. Me, the bullshit." I interrupted, unable to stomach her excuses. "Get dressed and get out. Both of you." Dad drew himself up with some of his usual authority, returning to his voice. "This is my house, son. Tia, you can't tell me to leave my own house." "Ask Mom if it's still your house," I replied coldly. "She's downstairs, by the way. She's the one who caught you. She's the one who called me." The color drained from his face as the implications sank in. I turned my attention back to Amber. "You have 5 minutes to get your stuff and go. Anything you leave behind gets thrown in the trash where it belongs." She started sobbing harder, shoulders shaking dramatically. "But where am I supposed to go? All my stuff is at our apartment. Should have thought about that before you decided to screw my father." I turned to leave, then stopped, remembering something important. "Oh, and the ring stays. That's a family heirloom from my grandmother, and clearly, you were never meant to be family." Her crying abruptly stopped, replaced by indignation. "You can't do this," she snapped, her eyes suddenly dry. "I've put so much into this relationship. I've put up with your juvenile friends, your obsession with those stupid sports games, your disgusting protein shakes in the blender at 5 a.m. I deserve better." I just stared at her, amazed at her entitlement. The woman who had just been caught cheating with my father was now listing my supposed failings as a partner. It was almost impressive in its delusion. "You deserve exactly what you're getting." I said, quietly, "Nothing." Dad tried to approach me, adjusting his stance to the one he'd used to intimidate me throughout my childhood. "Jacob, we need to talk about this like men." That's when something in me snapped. In 2 quick strides, I crossed the room and grabbed him by the throat, pushing him against the wall with my forearm across his windpipe. Up close, I could see every line on his face, the fear in his eyes as he realized I wasn't that scrawny. Teenager anymore? Like men, I growled, my voice barely recognizable. Men don't fuck their sons' fiancées. Fuck. You spent my entire life preaching about honor, responsibility, and family. You're nothing but a hypocrite and a coward. I released him and stepped back, my hands shaking with adrenaline. He slumped against the wall, gasping. You both disgust me, I said, my voice flat. 5 minutes. Then I'm coming back up here, and you don't want that. I walked out, closing the door behind me, and went downstairs to Mom. She was still at the kitchen table, looking small and lost. When she saw me, she stood up uncertainly. Did you? They're leaving, I said simply, putting an arm around her shoulders. We both deserve better than them, Mom. She leaned into me, and I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. What do we do now? She whispered. We rebuild, I told her, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. Without them, the next few weeks became a blur of pain, rage, and practical logistics. Mom couldn't bear to stay in the house, so she moved into my apartment while I slept on the couch. She filed for divorce the very next day, hiring Marianne Delaney, the most aggressive female attorney in town, who just happened to be the same woman whose kitchen remodel I had completed last year. Small towns have their advantages sometimes. Dad tried calling both of us constantly, leaving voicemails that cycled between anger, self-pity, and hollow apologies. After 3 days, I changed our numbers and had my crew go to the house to pick up the rest of Mom's essential belongings when we knew Dad would be at work. Amber was her own special brand of nightmare. She showed up at our apartment multiple times, cycling through different tactics. First came the tearful apologies, where she claimed Dad had manipulated her, that he had abused his position of authority over her. She always positioned herself as the victim in her own story. When that didn't work, she switched to anger, accusing me of being emotionally unavailable throughout our relationship. According to her revised history, I had driven her to look elsewhere for validation because I was obsessed with work and never listened to her needs. The final straw came when she showed up at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, screaming in the hallway that I was emotionally abusive and that she had sacrificed her career ambitions for me. Our neighbors got quite a show that night. I calmly opened the door, set a box of her remaining belongings in the hallway, including printouts of the explicit texts between her and my father that Mom had forwarded to me and handed copies to the neighbors who had gathered to watch the spectacle. Here's who she really is, I told them before closing the door in her horrified face. Mrs. Patel from apartment 4B, a sweet Indian grandmother who had always brought us homemade samosas, picked up one of the pages, adjusted her reading glasses, and gasped loudly. Shameless, she declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. That was the last time Amber showed her face at our building. Meanwhile, I was systematically dismantling what would have been our life together. I canceled all the wedding arrangements, lost some deposits, but it was worth every penny not to marry that snake. The relief of not going through with the wedding honestly outweighed the financial hit. The house was trickier. We had both signed the mortgage, with me putting down most of the down payment. After consulting with a lawyer, I bought out her portion considerably less than mine and put the house on the market immediately. I couldn't imagine living there now. Every room would remind me of the future we'd planned. The hardest part was telling our friends. Some took her side, if you can believe that. Lisa, who had been one of our mutual friends from the beginning, had the audacity to suggest I must have done something to drive Amber away. Those people were immediately cut from my life. The real one stood by me, helping Mom move her stuff out of the house when Dad was at work, bringing us food when neither of us felt like cooking, and just being there when I needed to rage, cry, or sit in silence. Mark, my best friend since high school, was particularly solid. I never thought she was good enough for you anyway, he admitted one night as we sat on my balcony. She always seemed like she was with you despite your job, not because of who you are. Those words hit home. Had I been so blinded by Amber's looks and status that I hadn't noticed her subtle disdain for my work? Looking back, there were signs like the way she had introduced me as Jake. He owns his own business rather than Jake the contractor. It was as if she was embarrassed by what I actually did, how she would steer conversations away from my projects at social gatherings. The little comments about how I could move into management and leave the physical labor behind once we were married. 3 months after Discovery Day, Mom and I had grimly dubbed it was starting to feel like maybe I could breathe. Again, the business was doing better than ever. Nothing like rage to fuel your work ethic. I had sold the marital home-to-be and bought a small cabin by the lake instead. Oh, something just for me with no memories attached. Mom found a small apartment near the hospital and seemed to be healing in her own way. She joined a support group for women going through divorce and started taking art classes on her days off. Something Dad had always discouraged as a waste of time and money. Then karma finally showed up to collect. Started with a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. After weeks of dodging unknown numbers, I almost didn't answer, but some sixth sense pushed me to pick up. "Jake, please don't hang up," my father pleaded. My finger hovered over the end call button. "Give me one good reason," I said coldly. "I'm losing everything," he replied, his voice cracking like I'd never heard before. "The divorce, the house, my job. I need help." I actually laughed. "And that's my problem. Why, your mother's attorney. She's going for everything. The house, the savings, even my pension. Someone at work found out about what happened." I could hardly believe it. Dad worked as a vice president at a conservative insurance firm, where they apparently frowned on executives sleeping with their sons' fiancés. "Who knew? Maybe you should call Amber for help," I suggested coolly. There was a pause. "She's not speaking to me anymore. Let me guess. She moved on to someone else who could do more for her." His silence confirmed it. "Jake, I know. I have no right to ask, but could you just talk to your mother? Ask her to go easier in the settlement. I'm going to end up with nothing. You're right about one thing. You have no right to ask. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences." I hung up and blocked his number. 2 days later, Mom called me during her lunch break. "You won't believe who came to see me at the hospital." "Who?" I asked, distracted by a supply delivery I was signing for. "Amber," she said. I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "Why? She's a mess. Jake lost her job. Can't make rent. Apparently, your father promised to leave me and support her, but now he can't even support himself." I snorted. "And what? She thought you'd help her." "No. She wanted me to convince you to help them, both of them." The audacity was almost impressive. "What did you say?" Mom's voice turned hard, something I rarely heard from her. "I told her I raised a smart son who doesn't waste time on trash." I smiled for what felt like the first time in months. That's my mom. But the universe wasn't done with its twisted sense of humor. The very next day, I pulled up to a job site to find Amber waiting by my truck. She'd lost weight. Her designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. When she saw me, she straightened up, trying to pull together that confident mask she always wore. "5 minutes," she said as I approached. "That's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I nodded. The clock was ticking. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, already starting those practice tears. "Your father told me things about you, made me believe you were hiding things from me." "Save it," I cut her off. "You weren't manipulated. You're just facing consequences for once in your life." Her face hardened. "Fine. You want the truth?" I was bored. "You were always working, always talking about building a future, but never living in the present." Robert made me feel desired. The casual use of my father's first name felt like another slap in the face. How many times had they laughed about me behind my back? "And how's that working out for you now?" I asked, leaning against my truck. "I'm about to be evicted," she admitted. "Nobody will hire me once they check my references." Your father is completely broke since your mom is taking him to the cleaners. We made a mistake, but do we deserve to have our lives completely destroyed? I pretended to think about it. Yes, yes you do, Jake. Please. She stepped closer, putting her hand on my arm like she used to when she wanted something. We could work this out. I still care about you. We had plans. A future. I looked down at her hand until she removed it. The future where you were sleeping with my father behind my back. That future. I'm not asking you to take me back, she said quickly. Just help me get back on my feet alone, maybe? Or use your connections to help me find a job. You're doing so well, and I'm suffering. The consequences of your actions, I finished for her. How's all that female empowerment? Working for you now? Aren't you strong and independent enough to solve your own problems? Her eyes flashed with anger. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing me brought low while you thrive. I checked my watch. Your 5 minutes are up. Don't contact me or my mother again. As I turned to walk away, she called after. Me, you'll regret this, Jake. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. I paused, looking back over my shoulder. Make sure you include the part where you slept with my father. I'm sure that'll win people. Over to your side. Her threat stuck with me, though. I knew Amber. She was vindictive when cornered, and I had built a reputation in this town that my business depended on. I needed to protect myself. That night, I called Mark my closest friend and the only one who knew every detail of what had happened. I need to send a message, I said, after explaining Amber's visit. I added, something that makes it clear they can't mess with me anymore. Mark was silent for a moment, weighing my words. What are you thinking? I replied. I'm thinking it's time they understand what it feels like to be completely exposed. The plan came together over the next few days. Mark's sister, Jen, worked at the country club where Dad was still clinging to his membership, one of the few things Mom's lawyer hadn't been able to touch yet because it was in his name only. It was his last connection to his old life, the place where he worked and pretended everything was fine. Jen confirmed what I'd suspected. Dad had been bringing Amber there, introducing her as his personal assistant to his business contacts, trying to help her land a job. The hypocrisy was unbelievable. He was still playing the devoted family man at the club, telling everyone that Mom and I were going through some things, but that it would all blow over soon. The country club was hosting their annual charity gala that weekend, the biggest social event of the year in our small town. Everyone who is anyone would be there, including all of Dad's colleagues and potential business connections for both of them. Jen confirmed they were on the guest list. Dad had donated heavily to the charity in previous years, so despite the rumors starting to circulate, the club hadn't pulled his invitation. Perfect. I made some calls to people who owed me favors, contractors, business associates, clients who'd been happy with my work, people with influence in town. The plan wasn't just about humiliation. It was about making sure their lies couldn't take root. The night of the gala, I dressed in my best suit, the one I'd bought for the rehearsal dinner. Ironically, Anne showed up with Mom on my arm. She looked amazing in a new dress that actually fit her properly instead of the frumpy things Dad always insisted she wear because they were age-appropriate. The looks when we walked in were priceless. Dad nearly choked on his sparkling water. Amber, standing beside him in a borrowed dress that was slightly too big, turned white as a sheet. They were clearly not expecting us. "What are you doing here?" Dad hissed when we approached them directly. I smiled pleasantly. "Supporting the charity, of course. Mom's the guest of honor. Didn't you know?" His eyes darted to her in confusion. "The hospital nominated me for the Community Service Award," Mom explained sweetly, "for my work with domestic violence victims." This was true. Mom had coordinated a program at the hospital for years, something Dad had always minimized as her little project. The nomination had come months ago, but the timing couldn't have been better. Amber shifted uncomfortably. "We should probably go, Robert." "Before you do," I said, raising my voice slightly so people nearby could hear. I wanted to thank you. Both properly. They froze, looking trapped between me and the crowd of curious onlookers. Thank us, Dad repeated, a warning in his eyes. Absolutely. I clinked my water glass against his. If you two hadn't shown me your true colors, I might have wasted years of my life on people who didn't deserve it. People were definitely listening now. Conversations quieted as they strained to hear. Jake, please, Amber whispered, her eyes darting around nervously. I ignored her. Instead, I've doubled my business, bought a lake house, and realized who my real friends are. I raised my glass higher. To karma. Several people nearby who'd been clued in ahead of time echoed, too. Karma. Dad grabbed my arm roughly. That's enough. I looked pointedly at his hand until he removed it. No, I really haven't. See, I brought something for everyone here tonight. I nodded to Mark, who was working the event as a favor to his sister. He dimmed the lights slightly, and the projector screen lowered from the ceiling at the front of the ballroom. What is this? Amber demanded, panic rising in her voice. Just a little slideshow I put together. Don't worry, it's totally PG-13. The screen lit up with images. Screenshots of their text messages with the most explicit parts blurred. Hotel records with timestamps matching Amber's girls' nights and Dad's business meetings. Security camera. Still showing them entering hotels together. No explicit content. I wasn't that cruel, but it was more than enough to tell the story. Each image appeared with a simple caption explaining what it showed. May 7th, while I was building our house, these two were building a different kind of relationship. June 2nd, Dad's back pain apparently only hurt when I invited him fishing. February 14th, Amber told me she was working. Actually, she was working with my father. The room went dead silent except for gasps and whispers. I looked around and saw Mary Ann Delaney, Mom's divorce attorney, filming the whole thing discreetly on her phone, a satisfied smile on her face. The final slide simply read, Character is what you do when no one is watching. When the lights came back up, Amber was crying. Dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The club president approached with a grim expression. Robert, I think it would be best if you left now. Your membership will be reviewed by the board. Dad glared at me with pure hatred. You've destroyed me. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low but intense. No, you destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. As security escorted them out, I heard Amber sobbing to anyone who would listen that it was all a misunderstanding and that she was being persecuted. Nobody was buying it. Mom squeezed my hand. Was that too much? She whispered. I watched them leave, shoulders hunched in defeat. No, I finally said. That was exactly enough. It's been a year since that night at the country club, and sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. My contracting business has expanded to 3 neighboring counties. I've hired 4 more crews and even brought Mom on to handle the office side of things. It turns out she has a real head for business. Now that she's away from Dad's constant criticism, I should have done this years ago, she told me recently, as she implemented a new scheduling system that increased our efficiency by 30%. That's the thing about toxic relationships. They convince you that you're less than you are. Both Mom and I spent years believing Dad's narrative about us. That I was the underachieving son who'd never amount to much, and that she was just a nurse with cute little projects. Dad lost everything. His job, his reputation, his friends. Last I heard, he was living in a studio apartment 3 towns over and working at a hardware store. Every now and then, some client will come into my office and start a story with, "You'll never believe who is mixing paint at Johnson's Hardware." I usually cut them off. I don't need the updates, and I don't take pleasure in his downfall anymore. It's just a fact of life, like rain or taxes. Amber tried to reinvent herself on Instagram as some kind of personal growth coach after nobody in town would hire her. Her bio read, "Rising from life's challenges, stronger than ever." Rich, coming from someone who created her own challenges by sleeping with her fiancé's father. Last I heard, her influencer career didn't take off, and she moved back in with her parents in Ohio. They both still try to contact me occasionally. Dad sends long, self-pitying emails about how he's changed and found God. Amber's messages flip between sweet-talking and threats, depending on how desperate she's feeling that day. Last month, she texted me saying she was ready to forgive me for exposing them at the gala. I had to laugh at that one. I don't respond to either of them. What would be the point? Mom's flourishing in ways I never expected. She quit nursing after 25 years and now runs the administrative side of my business. She's dating a decent guy who treats her like a widower who owns the local garden center. She smiles more than I can ever remember, takes pottery classes on Tuesdays, and recently started a small side business selling her ceramics online. I don't need a big romance, she told me when I asked if things were serious with Garden Center. Guy, as I call him, I need respect and kindness. Carl gives me that. As for me, I'm not rushing into another relationship. I've been on a few dates, but nothing serious. There's this landscape architect I've worked with on a few projects, and she keeps finding reasons to stop by my office. She's smart, down to earth, and actually thinks what I do is interesting. We'll see where it goes. About 2 months ago, I had an unexpected visitor at the cabin. Dad somehow found out where I lived and showed up unannounced one Sunday morning. I was on the deck, drinking coffee and reading when I heard a car pull up. He looked terrible thin, gray, with his clothes hanging off him. For a split second, I felt a twinge of pity. Then I remembered everything. You have 5 minutes, I told him, not inviting him onto the deck. Jake, please, he said, his voice shaking. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation, my savings. I'm living in a studio apartment and working retail at my age. I can't even afford health insurance anymore. I crossed my arms, waiting for him to get to the point. I need help, he admitted, eyes on the ground. Just a loan to get back on my feet. I could work for you, even. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you're right. I cut him off. You don't deserve it, and you're not getting it. Or my money. He looked up, desperation in his eyes. I'm your father. No, I said calmly. You gave up that right the moment you slept with the woman I was going to marry. A father protects his son. He doesn't betray him in the worst possible way, he pleaded. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I've been in therapy ever since, trying to understand why I did it. I was jealous of you. Jake, your success, your confidence, and the fact that you found such a beautiful, accomplished woman who loved you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So your solution was to sleep with her? To destroy my happiness because you were jealous of it. That's even worse, I know, he whispered. There's no excuse, but I'm begging you. Help me just this once. I have nowhere else to turn. I studied him for a long moment, this broken man who once seemed so powerful to me, who made me feel small for most of my life, who dismissed my achievements and belittled my choices. You know what the worst part was? I finally asked. That you slept with Amber. It was that you've been undermining me my entire life, making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Then, the one time I did something you approved of, finding a suitable partner, you had to take that from me, too. He flinched at the truth of it. I'm not giving you money, I said firmly. I'll tell you what I'll do. Oh, there's a program in the city for veterans who need job training and housing assistance. I know the guy who runs it. I'll make a call and tell him you're coming. The rest is up to you. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Jake. I don't deserve it. No, you don't, I agreed. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for me because I don't want to carry this anger anymore. But Dad, this is it. This is the last thing I ever do for you. After this, we're done. He nodded slowly, accepting the terms. As he turned to go, he paused. Your mother, is she happy? Happier than she ever was with you, I said honestly. He winced, but nodded again. Good. She deserves that. At least we can agree on one thing. A week after Dad's visit, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Amber, of course. All it said was, "I heard you helped Robert. What about me?" I blocked the number without responding. Some people never change.